3.95 billion euros. That was the bank balance Parmalat claimed to have in a Cayman Islands account in December 2003. There was just one problem. The money never existed. The account never existed. And the bank letter confirming this balance? Forged. Using Microsoft Word. In the next 25 minutes, you're going to discover how a company that sold milk managed to fake 14 billion euros in assets, deceive auditors from Deloitte and Grant Thornton for over a decade, and orchestrate the largest corporate fraud in European history, a case you've probably never heard of. And look, I know what you're thinking, another corporate scandal? But the Parmalat case isn't Enron. It's not Theranos. This happened in Europe, involved milk and yogurt, products you probably have in your fridge right now. And the fraud was so audacious it included forged documents that an intern could have identified. First, I want to show you how an Italian family business became a global dairy empire. Then you'll see exactly how they built one of the most sophisticated and simultaneously most ridiculous accounting frauds ever documented. And at the end, I'll reveal why this scandal should have been impossible to pull off, but it wasn't. Welcome to Collapse Chronicles. Let's begin. Parma, Italy. 1961. Callisto Tanzi was 22 years old when he transformed his father's ham and preserves company into something completely different. He saw an opportunity no one else was seeing, pasteurized milk in Tetra Pak cartons that didn't need refrigeration. And this changed everything. In 1960s Italy, most people bought fresh milk that spoiled within days. Tanzi bet on UHT milk, ultra-high temperature, that lasted months on the shelf. It was convenient. It was revolutionary. And Italians literally bought into the idea. But here's where it gets interesting. Tanzi didn't stop at Italy. 1970s, expansion across Europe. 1980s, Latin America, especially Brazil. 1990s, Parmalat became the first Italian company listed on the New York Stock Exchange. They sold milk in 30 countries. They sponsored soccer teams. They even had a Formula One racing team. By 2003, Parmalat reported annual revenues of 7.6 billion euros. It employed 36,000 people. It was Italy's seventh largest industrial company. And none of it made sense. Because there's something about the dairy business you need to understand. Profit margins are tiny. We're talking 2 to 5% in a good year. You're selling milk, not software. You can't have exponential growth selling yogurt. But Parmalat? They reported consistent growth year after year. Robust profits. Aggressive expansions. And everyone accepted it. The banks? They lent money. The auditors? They approved the balance sheets. The investors? They bought the shares. And all of this was being sustained by a fraud so basic, so fundamentally stupid, that when it was finally discovered, forensic auditors couldn't believe it had worked for 15 years. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me show you how this started. The Parmalat fraud had 3 main components, and I'm going to explain each one because you'll realize it wasn't genius, it was audacious. First, Tanzi created hundreds of shell subsidiaries around the world. Cayman Islands, Luxembourg, Malta, countries with, let's say, flexible transparency laws. These companies did one thing: sell Parmalat products to other Parmalat subsidiaries. On paper, of course. It's like having a company in your right hand selling imaginary products to a company in your left hand. Both are yours, but on the accounting books. It looks like you're doing real business, generating real revenue. Second, and this is where it gets absurd, Parmalat claimed to have 3.95 billion euros in a Bank of America account in the Cayman Islands. To prove this to auditors, they presented a letter from the bank confirming the balance. The letter was fake, and it wasn't a sophisticated elite forgery with special inks and watermarks. It was a document created in Microsoft Word with a Bank of America logo copied from the internet. And it worked. 4 years. Third, when you have fake revenues, you need to explain why you need real loans. Parmalat's answer: oh, our money is stuck in overseas subsidiaries for tax reasons. So they took loans from real banks to cover real operational costs. They used part of that money to pay off old loans. And they created new loans to cover the holes from previous loans. It was a corporate Ponzi scheme, but instead of deceiving individual investors, they were deceiving multinational banks. But here's something I need you to understand. Callisto Tanzi wasn't a Wall Street sociopath. Photos of him show an Italian gentleman with glasses who looked more like a kind grandfather than a financial criminal. And maybe that's why it worked. Nobody suspected that the guy who built an empire selling milk to children was simultaneously building one of history's largest frauds. Hold on to that information because it'll make complete sense when I show you how everything collapsed. Now, the obvious question, how did nobody notice? Because people did notice. They just weren't heard. In 1997, a financial analyst named John Paolo Bernardini published a report questioning how Parmalat maintained such high profit selling milk in low-margin markets. The company's response? Legal threats. The report was pulled from circulation. In 2002, Parmalat's real debt was estimated at 6 billion euros, but several independent analyses suggested it could be 3 times higher. The company explained this with offshore subsidiaries and complex tax strategies, and everyone just accepted it. And here's where it gets disturbing. Parmalat was audited by giants, Deloitte & Touche and Grant Thornton. These weren't small firms, they were 2 of the world's largest auditing companies. And they approved fraudulent balance sheets for 14 years. How? Part was incompetence, part was complicity, but mostly, it was because nobody actually verified whether those 3.95 billion euros in the Cayman Islands existed. They trusted the bank letter. The fake letter. Made in Word. November 2003. Parmalat needed to pay a 150 million euro bond that was maturing. It wasn't an absurd amount for a company claiming to have billions in cash, but they couldn't pay. And that's when people started asking real questions. December 9, 2003, Deloitte auditors finally decided to confirm the Cayman Islands account balance. They contacted Bank of America directly. December 17th, the bank's response arrived. We have no knowledge of any account with this number. This letter was not issued by us. The signature is fake. 3.95 billion euros evaporated. December 19th, Parmalat's CFO, Fausto Tana, is arrested. December 23rd, Callisto Tanzi resigns. December 27th, Tanzi is arrested trying to withdraw 500,000 euros in cash. December 24th, 2003, Christmas Eve, Parmalat files for bankruptcy. When forensic auditors finally combed through the books, they discovered almost 14 billion euros in fictitious assets, 8 billion euros in hidden debts, more than 300 phantom offshore subsidiaries, forged documents numbering in the thousands, and there's more. 500 million euros of the diverted funds went straight into Tanzi's and his family's pockets. He bought soccer teams, financed a Formula One team that burned through money, built a media empire, all with money that never existed. And here's the detail I love most about this case. When forensic investigators examined the forged documents, they found errors that a first-semester accounting student would identify. Dates in wrong formats, signatures that changed between documents, logos in different resolutions, spelling errors in official bank documents, and my favorite, default Windows fonts on documents supposedly from the 1990s. This wasn't Ocean's 11. This was amateurism at an industrial scale. And yet it worked for almost 15 years. Callisto Tanzi, sentenced to 18 years in prison for fraud, money laundering, and use of false documents. Served 10 years, released in 2015 due to advanced age. Today, at 85, he lives in Parma. Fausto Tana, the CFO, sentenced to 14 years, serving time. The auditors, Grant Thornton, was fined. Deloitte faced lawsuits, but no individual auditor went to prison. 135,000 small investors, many of them ordinary Italians who bought Parmalat shares as retirement investments, lost everything. Parmalat bonds? Worth zero. The shares? Worthless paper. 27,000 employees lost their jobs immediately. Many never received their pension funds. The company was restructured under Italian government intervention. In 2011, Parmalat was acquired by France's Lactalis. Today, Parmalat products still exist on shelves. The brand survived, but the company, it's a shadow of what it was. So why should you care about a 20-year-old fraud involving Italian milk? Because the Parmalat case exposed 3 truths about the global financial system that remain relevant today. First, complexity is the best smokescreen. The more complicated the corporate structure, the easier it is to hide fraud. Tanzi created hundreds of offshore subsidiaries specifically to confuse auditors. Second, reputation is a powerful currency. Parmalat managed to deceive banks and investors for 15 years because Tanzi was seen as a respectable businessman building a company of everyday products. Nobody suspected the milkman. Third, and most important, the financial auditing system is fundamentally broken. If 2 of the world's largest auditing firms can approve balance sheets with 14 billion euros in fictitious assets without ever actually verifying if the money exists, the system doesn't work. And here's the scary part. Nothing has structurally changed since then. The same firms audit the same companies. The same tax havens allow the same opaque structures. Parmalat wasn't the last case. It was just the most obvious one. 14 billion euros. Documents forged in Word. A fake bank letter that fooled the world for 15 years. The Parmalat case is a reminder that the biggest frauds don't happen in dark rooms with criminal geniuses. They happen in well-lit corporate offices, presented in PowerPoint, approved by renowned auditors. And if you found this story insane, I need you to do 2 things. First, leave your like because this literally helps this type of investigative content reach more people who've never heard of these cases. Second, tell me in the comments, had you ever heard of Parmalat? And which obscure corporate fraud do you want me to cover next? BCCI Bank? Carrion Group? Drop it down below. And if you want to understand how a tech company in India faked 1 billion euros in revenue using even more ridiculous techniques than Parmalat, I'm talking about ghost employees and Photoshop deposit receipts. The video about Satyam Computer Services is right here on the screen. I'm Collapse Chronicles. Thanks for watching. And remember, when a company seems too good to be true, it probably is. Until the next collapse.